The black SUV crawled past my house for the third time that morning, but I was too focused on my empty driveway to care. My car, my beautiful silver Mazda that I'd spent 3 years paying off, was gone. In its place was nothing but oil stains and gravel, mocking me with memories of what should have been there. I'm Georgia, and this was the moment my life started unraveling like a cheap sweater. "Mom!" I shouted, bursting through the front door. The house smelled like coffee and guilt. "Where's my car?" My mother sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "Honey, I can explain." "Explain what? That my car magically disappeared overnight?" My voice cracked. I'd just gotten back from a 3-day environmental research trip, exhausted and dreaming of a hot shower, only to find this nightmare instead. "I had to sell it," she whispered, not meeting my eyes. "Kyson? He was in trouble." Of course, it always came back to my brother. What kind of trouble? "He owed some people money. They were threatening him, Georgia. What was I supposed to do? Call the police? Tell him to face consequences for once in his life?" I grabbed the edge of the counter to steady myself. "How much?" 20,000. The room spun. 20,000? Mom, that car was worth twice that. Who did you sell it to? "A dealer. He gave cash, no questions asked." She finally looked up, tears in her eyes. "Your brother would have been hurt." "So you stole from me instead?" The words tasted like battery acid. "Where is he?" "I don't know. He hasn't been home in days." My phone was in my hand before I could think. 3 rings, then Kyson's voicemail. "You better call me back," I hissed. "Or I swear to God I'm going straight to the police." That black SUV rolled by again, slower this time. Through the tinted windows, I caught a glimpse of someone watching our house. "You can't go to the police," Mom pleaded, grabbing my arm. "These people, they're dangerous." I yanked away from her. "More dangerous than stealing my car? More dangerous than enabling Kyson's gambling?" "It's not gambling, it's—" She caught herself, but too late. "It's what, Mom? What aren't you telling me?" The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. Outside, a car door slammed. "Georgia," Mom's voice dropped to barely a whisper, "please just let it go, for all our sakes." Someone knocked at the front door. 3 sharp raps that made Mom flinch. "I'm calling the police," I said, pulling out my phone again. "No!" Mom lunged for my phone, but I held it out of reach. "You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand perfectly. My brother's gotten himself into something illegal, and you're helping him destroy this family. Again." The knocking came harder this time. Mom backed away from the door, shaking her head. "Mrs. Simmons?" a male voice called out. "We need to discuss the payment schedule." I moved toward the door, but Mom grabbed my shirt. "Please," she begged, "don't answer it." Looking at her terrified face, something clicked. This wasn't just about Kyson's gambling. This was bigger, darker, and my car was just the beginning. I pulled out my phone and started recording, keeping it hidden behind my back. "Coming!" I called out, ignoring Mom's desperate attempts to stop me. When I opened the door, 2 men in expensive suits stood there. The black SUV idled behind them. "Can I help you?" I asked, voice steady despite my racing heart. The taller man smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "We're looking for Kyson. Is he home?" "No, but I'd love to talk about my car that was sold to cover his debts." The man's smile didn't waver. "I'm afraid that's a private family matter." "So, is this conversation?" I replied, "which I'm recording for the police." Their faces hardened instantly. The shorter man took a step forward, but his partner grabbed his arm. "We'll be in touch," the tall one said, turning away. "Tell Kyson he has 3 days." I watched them drive away, my hand shaking as I stopped the recording. Behind me, Mom had collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "I'm filing a police report," I said, my voice ice cold. "And this time, you're not stopping me." "They'll kill him," she whispered. "Then he better start talking fast." I grabbed my jacket and keys. To the house, since my car keys were gone along with my car. Because whatever he's involved in, it ends now. As I walked to the bus stop, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stay out of it, sister. Some debts can only be paid in blood." I took a screenshot and kept walking. They thought they could scare me into silence? They clearly didn't know what happened when someone messed with my family, even if that someone was family themselves. Detective Sergio's office smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. He studied the recording on my phone, replaying it for the third time while I fidgeted in the hard plastic chair. "These aren't your typical loan sharks," he said finally, sliding the phone back to me. "The way they operate, the suits, the careful language, this is organized. I don't care what they are. I want my car back. Your car's probably already been chopped and sold for parts." He leaned forward. "But that's not what really concerns me. Your brother's gotten himself mixed up with some dangerous people." I pulled out Kyson's laptop, the one I'd grabbed from his room while Mom was in the shower. "Maybe this will help. It was hidden under his mattress." Sergio's eyebrows shot up as he opened it. The screen flickered to life, revealing a login page. Any idea what his password might be? A memory flashed. Kyson and me, kids again, building a fort in the backyard. Our secret hideout where we'd share everything. Try Fortnite 1995. The screen unlocked. "How'd you know?" He was always sentimental about stupid things. I swallowed hard, remembering how close we used to be. "Check his emails." Sergio clicked through folders, his frown deepening. "These messages, they're encoded. Look at this pattern." The emails seemed normal at first glance. Discussions about fantasy football, movie reviews, casual chat. But there was something off about them. "Wait," I said, pointing at the screen. "These movie ratings, they're all numbers between 1 and 10, but they're for movies that don't exist." "Good catch." Sergio grabbed a notepad. "Could be a simple substitution cipher, each number representing something else." My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Laptop was insurance. "Bad move, sister." "They know," I whispered, showing Sergio the message. He immediately closed the laptop. "You need protection. These people, I need answers." I stood up, pacing the small office. Kyson's never been perfect, but he's not a criminal. Someone's got leverage on him, and I bet it has something to do with Mom. "What makes you say that?" "The way she's acting. She's terrified, but not just for Kyson. It's like she's afraid of something else." I stopped pacing. "I need to talk to him." "Georgia, these people are watching you. If you—" My phone rang. Kyson's name flashed on the screen. Sergio nodded, hitting record on his desk device. "Where are you?" I demanded. "Sis, I'm sorry." His voice was rough, like he'd been crying. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "Then fix it. Come in and talk to the police." "I can't. They've got Mom." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean they've got Mom? I just saw her this morning." "Check the house. She won't be there." He took a shaky breath. "They knew you took the laptop. This is my fault. All of it." "Kyson, what did you do?" "It started as gambling, I swear. Just cards, normal stuff. But then they showed me the photos of Mom meeting with their boss last year. Said they'd expose everything if I didn't help them." "Help them with what?" "Moving money. Lots of it. Through accounts I set up at work." He paused. The gambling debts were just a cover story. Sergio was already on his phone, dispatching units to our house. "Where are you?" I asked again, softer this time. "Somewhere safe, for now." His voice cracked. "But they want the laptop back, or they'll hurt her." "I'm so sorry, Georgia. I thought I was protecting her, but I just made everything worse." "We can help you," I said, looking at Sergio, who nodded encouragingly. "Both of you. Just tell me where to meet." "No, don't you get it? This goes deeper than you know. Mom's not just a victim. She was involved before I was. The photos prove it." Static crackled on the line. Someone spoke in the background. "I have to go," Kyson said quickly. "Don't trust anyone, even the cops. Some of them are—" The line went dead. Sergio was already moving. "We'll trace the call. Your house is being checked now." My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo. Mom, sitting in what looked like a warehouse office, holding today's newspaper. She looked unharmed but terrified. "They're playing us," I said, showing Sergio the photo. Using Mom to control Kaisen. Using Kaisen to control me. The question is why? What's on this laptop that's so important? I stared at the screen, at the encoded emails. Whatever it is, we have 12 hours to figure it out. Look at the newspaper in the photo. It's the morning edition. They're sending a message. You should go somewhere safe, Sergio said. Let us handle this. I thought of Kaisen's warning about the police, about Mom's involvement being deeper than we knew, about the black SUV that kept watching our house. No, I said, pulling the laptop closer. I'm staying. Those emails are the key to everything. I met Sergio's concerned gaze. And right now, I don't know who to trust except myself. The numbers swam before my eyes as I scribbled another failed attempt at cracking the code. 6 hours had passed in Sergio's office, and we were getting nowhere. Take a break, Sergio said, returning with fresh coffee. You're going to burn out. I can't. I rubbed my temples. Mom's out there somewhere and... My phone lit up. Another message. Getting warmer, but time's running out. They're watching us, I said, showing Sergio. Somehow, they know what we're doing. He immediately pulled the blinds shut. There must be a leak in the department. I stared at the laptop screen, at those endless emails about fake movies. Something clicked. Wait, these aren't movie ratings. I grabbed a fresh piece of paper. Their coordinates, latitude and longitude, split across multiple messages. Sergio leaned over my shoulder as I mapped out the numbers. Storage facilities, he said, all across the state. Money laundering, I whispered. That's what Kaisen meant about moving money. A sharp knock made us both jump. Marissa, my best friend from college, stood in the doorway. Your neighbor called me, she said. Said there were police at your house. Why didn't you tell me what was happening? Because I didn't want to drag anyone else into this mess. I hesitated, then made a decision. But since you're here, you're good with patterns, right? Take a look at this. As Marissa studied the emails, her eyes widened. These aren't just coordinates. Look at the timestamps. They're routing instructions. Someone's moving something through these locations in a specific order. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from another unknown number. Put it on speaker, Sergio said, recording device ready. Hello? Smart girl, a distorted voice said. But do you understand what you're really looking at? Where's my mother? Safe for now, but we need that laptop back. You have 6 hours left. Let me talk to her. A pause, then Mom's voice. Georgia, baby, I'm so sorry. I never meant... That's enough, the voice cut in. Bring the laptop to the storage facility on 5th and Main. Come alone, or Mommy Dearest takes a swim in the harbor. The line went dead. It's a trap, Sergio said immediately. Obviously. I stood up, pacing. But what choice do we have? We could set up a sting operation, get tactical teams in place. No. I remembered Kaisen's warning about corrupt cops. They'll know. They always know. Marissa, who'd been quiet, suddenly gasped. These aren't just storage facilities. Look at the company names. They're all owned by shell corporations linking back to one holding company, Meridian Trust. My mother's bank, I said, where she's worked for 15 years. Everything started falling into place. Mom's strange behavior, the photos they were using to blackmail Kaisen, the money movement patterns. My phone rang again. This time, it was Kaisen. Don't trust Sergio, he said without preamble. He's been on their payroll for months. I looked up at the detective, who was watching me with concerned eyes. Was he really part of this? Prove it, I said. Check his left desk drawer. There's a burner phone, same model they gave me for communications. My heart pounding, I walked to Sergio's desk. Mind if I check something? He stepped aside, looking confused. Go ahead. I pulled open the drawer. There, under some papers, was a cheap flip phone. Sergio's face changed instantly. He reached for his gun, but Marissa was faster, throwing her coffee mug at his head. It connected with a crack, and he stumbled. I grabbed the laptop and ran, Marissa right behind me. We could hear Sergio shouting into his radio as we hit the stairs. My car's out back, Marissa said as we burst into the parking lot. Where to? 5th and Main, I said, clutching the laptop. But we're not giving this back. Not until we know everything. As we drove, Kyson's voice came through my phone. There's a program on that laptop. It tracks all their transactions, all their dirty money. Mom found out about it last year. Tried to report it, but they caught her. Been using her as leverage ever since. Why didn't she tell me? To protect you. Same reason I kept quiet. He paused. I'm at the storage facility. Got here an hour ago. They don't know yet. You're crazy. They'll kill you. Maybe, but I'm done running. Done letting them hurt our family. His voice hardened. I'm sending you a file. Everything I know about their operation. If anything happens to me or Mom, make it public. The file appeared on my phone. Documents, photos, transaction records. Kyson, wait. I love you, sis. Sorry I was such a screw-up. He hung up. Marissa glanced at me as we sped through a yellow light. What's the plan? I stared at the laptop, at my phone with its damning evidence, at the approaching storage facility where my brother was about to do something incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. We're going to finish this, I said. All of it. The storage facility loomed ahead, its gates open like a monster's mouth, ready to swallow us whole. Marissa killed the headlights as we pulled into the storage facility. The place was a maze of identical orange doors and concrete walls, security cameras blinking like red eyes in the growing darkness. This is insane, she whispered. We should call the FBI or something. No time. I checked my phone's map. Unit 247, that's where the coordinates point. A figure emerged from the shadows, making us both jump. Kyson, you shouldn't have come, he said, opening my door, but I'm glad you did. Where's Mom? Building C, second floor office, 2 guards outside, 1 with her. He looked worse than he sounded on the phone, bruised eye, split lip. They don't know I'm here yet. What happened to your face? Doesn't matter. Listen, I've got a plan. Headlights swept across the lot, the black SUV. Hide! Kyson shoved us between 2 storage units. Whatever happens, wait for my signal. We pressed ourselves against the cold metal as car doors slammed. Right on time, a man's voice said. Where's your sister? She's coming, Kyson replied. Had to ditch some cops first. The laptop? She'll bring it, but I want to see my mother first. Footsteps moved away. I peered around the corner. 3 men in suits were leading Kyson toward Building C. Now what? Marissa asked. I pulled out my phone, forwarding Kyson's file to every news outlet in my contacts. Now we get ready. For what? Something stupid. I handed her the laptop. Take this to your car. If anything happens, drive straight to Channel 7 News. They're expecting you. Georgia, no. Please. I need someone I can trust on the outside. She hugged me fiercely, then disappeared into the darkness with the laptop. I counted to 30, then followed the path Kyson had taken. Building C loomed ahead, its second-floor windows illuminated. Through the glass, I could see Mom sitting in an office chair, hands bound. A service ladder ran up the building's back wall. My environmental fieldwork was about to pay off in an unexpected way. The metal rungs were cold against my palms as I climbed. Below, I heard Kyson's voice carrying through an open window. All the account numbers, everything you need. I reached the roof, staying low. A skylight offered a perfect view of the office. Mom sat rigid in her chair, while a man in an expensive suit paced behind her. Kyson stood by the door, hands raised. 2 more suits blocked the exit. Where's the laptop? Suit guy demanded. Georgia's bringing it. 10 minutes. You said that 20 minutes ago. He pulled out a gun, pressing it to Mom's head. Maybe we need to motivate her. Wait. Kyson stepped forward. Check your phone. Everyone's phones buzzed simultaneously. Mine too. A news alert. Breaking. Major banking scandal uncovered at Meridian Trust. What did you do? Suit guy grabbed Kyson's collar. Insurance policy. Kyson smiled through bloody teeth. Every news outlet in the state just got proof of your operation. Kill us, and it all goes public. I used their distraction to slip through the skylight, landing silently on a filing cabinet. Mom saw me, but didn't react. You're bluffing, suit guy snarled. Check your stocks, Kyson said. More phones buzzed. Someone cursed. "We're down 12 points already," one suit said. "Sir, we need to contain this." "Contain this," I said, dropping onto suit guy's shoulders. The gun went flying as we crashed to the floor. Kyson tackled the nearest guard. Mom, somehow free of her restraints, slammed her chair into the other one. "Georgia, catch!" Mom threw me a keyring. "Storage unit 247!" I ran, footsteps thundering behind me, downstairs, through corridors, counting numbers until I reached 247. The key worked. I yanked the door up. Inside sat my car. "Get in!" Kyson appeared, shoving me toward the driver's side. Mom jumped in back. "How? Drive!" they shouted together. I floored it, crashing through a wooden gate onto the street. The black SUV roared after us. "They never sold your car," Mom said, ducking as shots rang out. "They kept it as collateral. The laptop was a distraction." "From what?" "From what's in the trunk," Kyson said. 5 years of physical records, account numbers, transactions, names of every dirty cop and banker in their network. I swerved around a corner, tires screaming. "That's why you leaked the story? To keep them from killing us?" "Part of it." He grinned, despite his injuries. "Also wanted to tank their stock before trading opened tomorrow. Cost them millions." "Both of you shut up and call Marissa," Mom ordered. "Tell her to meet us at the police station, the real police." "How do we know who to trust?" I asked, taking another sharp turn. Mom pulled out her phone. "Because I've spent the last year building my own insurance policy. Friends in the FBI, SEC, everyone they couldn't buy. Just needed the evidence to make it stick." The SUV was falling behind as we hit the highway. "Mom?" I glanced in the rearview mirror. "I'm sorry, I thought you were just enabling him." "Honey," she smiled, "where do you think Kyson learned to play the long game?" Red and blue lights appeared ahead, but this time, they were on our side. The FBI safe house looked like any other suburban home, complete with tacky garden gnomes and an overgrown lawn. Agent Danielle, who happened to be my boss at the environmental agency, sat across from us in the living room, spreading photos across the coffee table. "You've been undercover this whole time?" I asked, still processing the revelation. 3 years, she nodded. "We knew Meridian Trust was dirty, but couldn't prove it. Your mother changed everything." Mom squeezed my hand. "I noticed the discrepancies in international transfers last year. When I tried reporting it internally, they showed me photos of Kyson gambling at their private club. They'd been grooming me," Kyson said, holding an ice pack to his face. "Getting me in debt, then offering ways to work it off. I thought I was protecting Mom by playing along." "And I thought I was protecting both of you by staying quiet," Mom added. Agent Danielle laid out more photos. "The operation goes deeper than banking. They've been using storage facilities to move more than money." "Drugs?" I asked. "Sometimes, but mainly classified technology, corporate secrets, things worth more than cash." She pointed to a familiar face in one photo. "That's why Sergio was on their payroll. He kept local police away from their storage units." My phone buzzed. Another news alert. Meridian Trust CEO found dead in apparent suicide. "It's starting," Danielle said grimly. "The rats are jumping ship." "What about the other cops?" Kyson asked. "The ones still out there?" "We're rounding them up now, but some will slip through the cracks." She looked at each of us. "That's why you're here. Until we've contained the situation, you're in protective custody." A knock at the door made everyone tense. An agent entered with Marissa. "Your friend checks out," Danielle said. "She's been helping us decrypt more files from the laptop." Marissa hugged me tight. "You could have told me your boss was FBI." "I didn't know." "Speaking of things we didn't know," Kyson interrupted, "what exactly is in my car's trunk that's so important?" Mom stood up, pacing. "Not just records. There's a hard drive containing every illegal transaction they've made for the past decade. Names, dates, account numbers, everything." "Which makes all of you targets," Danielle added. "The drive is encrypted, but they don't know that. They think you can access it." As if on cue, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Put it on speaker," Danielle ordered, recording equipment ready. "Hello?" I answered. "Quite a show today." The voice was familiar, the same distorted tone from the storage facility. "But this isn't over," Seems pretty over to me. Your CEO just took the coward's way out. He was weak. I'm not. A pause. The drive, Georgia. Bring it to the location I'm texting you or start planning 3 funerals. You don't get to threaten my family anymore. No? Ask your mother about Project Lighthouse. Ask her what really happened to your father. Mom went pale. You have 1 hour. The line went dead. Mom? I turned to her. What's Project Lighthouse? What did he mean about Dad? She sank into a chair, hands shaking. Your father's car accident 10 years ago. It wasn't an accident. He was an auditor, investigating overseas accounts. He found something. Something about a secret project involving military contracts. They killed him? Kyson's voice cracked. They made it look like drunk driving. I couldn't prove anything. She looked up, eyes hard. That's why I stayed at Meridian, gathering evidence, waiting for a chance to bring them down. The drive, Danielle said urgently. Where is it? Safe, Mom replied. But they're right. This isn't over. The CEO was just a figurehead. The real power is someone else, someone who's been watching us all along. My phone buzzed with an address. The lighthouse at Porter's Point. It's a trap, Marissa said. Obviously, I agreed. But it's also our chance to end this. No, Danielle stood. You're staying here. We'll handle it. Like you handled my father's case? Mom challenged. No offense, but we've gotten further in 3 days than the FBI did in 3 years. Because they weren't expecting it from us, Kyson added. We're their blind spot. I looked at the address again. The lighthouse closes to tourists at sunset. That's in 2 hours. You can't seriously be considering this, Marissa protested. But I saw the look in Mom's eyes, saw Kyson straightening despite his injuries. This was our fight. We're going, I said, but we're doing it our way. Danielle studied us for a long moment. You realize you're talking about using yourselves as bait? No, Mom said, pulling out her phone. We're talking about finishing what my husband started. She showed us a photo. Dad at the same lighthouse 10 years ago, the day before he died. Project Lighthouse wasn't just a code name, she said. It was literal. Whatever they're hiding, whatever got my husband killed, it's there. Then let's go get it, I said, grabbing my car keys. Sometimes the only way to escape a trap is to spring it yourself. The lighthouse stood like a bone-white finger against the darkening sky. Waves crashed against the rocky shore below as we parked in the empty lot. Last chance to back out, I said, checking my phone's signal. 1 bar. They killed Dad here, Kyson replied, his face grim. We finish this here. Mom touched the silver locket at her neck, the one containing Dad's photo. Remember the plan. No heroes. We'd left Marissa back at the safe house with Danielle, coordinating with FBI teams. They were positioned out of sight, waiting for our signal. The hard drive was secure in a safety deposit box across town, our insurance policy. The lighthouse door creaked open at our approach. After you, a voice called from inside. Mom squeezed my hand, then stepped through. Kyson and I followed. The interior was dim, lit only by emergency lights. A man in an expensive suit stood at the base of the spiral staircase. Even in the poor light, I recognized him from Mom's old company photos. Marcus, she said coldly. Board chairman himself. I'm honored. Helen? He smiled without warmth. Your husband had that same sarcastic tone, right before his accident. Kyson lunged forward, but I grabbed his arm. The drive, Marcus said. Where is it? Safe, I answered. Like we are, with FBI teams surrounding this place. He laughed. You mean the teams at the South Dock? And the roadblock on Harbor Street? Already taken care of. He pulled out his phone, showing live footage of unconscious agents. Amazing how many people still accept cash bribes. Mom stepped forward. This was never about money laundering, was it? Project Lighthouse. It's something worse. Smart woman. Too smart. He gestured to the stairs. Shall we? The view from the top is spectacular. We climbed in silence, Marcus behind us with his hand in his jacket pocket, obviously holding a gun. 5 stories up, The lighthouse opened into a circular room with windows facing the ocean. 10 years ago, Marcus said, your husband stood in this exact spot. He'd discovered our little side operation, weapons testing, biological agents, things the military wouldn't officially approve. The storage facilities, I realized. They weren't just for money. International buyers pay well for advanced weapons. The banking network just makes it look legitimate. He pulled out his gun, confirming our suspicions. Helen, show them. Mom walked to a section of wall, pressing a hidden panel. A door slid open, revealing a modern elevator. Dad found this, Kyson whispered. Anne died for it, Marcus confirmed. The lighthouse is just a cover. The real facility is below sea level. My phone buzzed, the signal we'd been waiting for. You won't get away with this, I said, playing for time. The evidence is worthless without the encryption key. He smiled again. Which your mother has memorized. Don't you, Helen? Mom's hand went to her locket. I don't know what you're talking about. No. Your husband's last words were about a silver key. Took us years to realize he meant the key was in the silver. He pointed the gun at me. Open the locket, Helen. She unclasped it slowly, hands shaking. Inside, behind Dad's photo, was a tiny microchip. The key, Marcus said softly, all this time right around your neck. Hand it over. Mom, don't. The gun swung toward me. The chip, or I redecorate this lighthouse with your daughter's blood. Mom stepped toward him, locket extended. But as Marcus reached for it, she threw it, not to him, but out the window. No! He rushed to the window. That's when Kyson tackled him. The gun went flying as they crashed into the wall. I dove for the weapon, but Marcus kicked it away, sending it skittering toward the elevator. You idiots! He snarled, throwing Kyson off. That chip was worth millions! It was worth nothing, Mom said, helping Kyson up, just like your security footage of the FBI teams. Marcus went still. What? Did you really think we'd come alone? I smiled. Check your phone again. He pulled it out. The footage was gone, replaced by a text. Signal traced. Move in. Helicopter spotlights suddenly flooded the lighthouse windows. Boots thundered on the stairs below. You played us, Marcus realized. No, Mom said. We played you like you played us for 10 years. That chip? A fake. The real one was delivered to the FBI an hour ago. Along with everything from the hard drive, Kyson added. While you were watching the FBI teams you thought you'd bought, the real raid was happening at all your storage facilities. Marcus lunged for the elevator, but I was closer. I grabbed the gun from the floor and pointed it at him. Don't, I said. Dad deserves better than having more blood spilled here. The door burst open. Real FBI agents swarmed in, led by Danielle. As they cuffed Marcus, Mom hugged us both. Your father would be so proud. Helen, Marcus called as they led him away. There are others, people you don't know about. This isn't over. No, she agreed, taking our hands. But whatever comes next, we face it together. Through the lighthouse windows, red and blue lights reflected off the waves like fireworks. The dark waters that had hidden so many secrets were finally giving them up. Sometimes justice takes a decade. Sometimes it takes a family willing to risk everything. And sometimes it takes both. The FBI's evidence room buzzed with activity as agents cataloged everything seized from the lighthouse facility. Weapons prototypes, biological samples, and enough documents to fill a library, all hidden beneath that innocent white tower. You need to see this, Danielle said, leading us to a computer terminal. We found it in Marcus's private server. The screen showed security footage from 10 years ago. My hand found Mom's as we watched Dad walk into the lighthouse, briefcase in hand. You don't have to watch, Kyson said softly. Yes, we do. The footage showed Dad discovering the hidden elevator, confronting Marcus. There was no audio, but we could see them arguing. Then Dad reached for his phone, probably trying to call for help, and Mom turned away. I couldn't blame her. There's more, Danielle said gently. Earlier footage shows your father meeting with someone else, someone who warned him about Project Lighthouse. She fast-forwarded to a different day. Dad sat in a cafe with a woman I recognized from recent news coverage, the FBI director who'd just announced her sudden retirement. The corruption went all the way to the top, Kyson realized. Goes, a voice corrected. We turned to see Marcus, handcuffed and flanked by guards. Present tense. You really think I'm the only one? You're done talking, Danielle snapped, but he continued. Helen, tell them about the other projects, the ones your husband never found. Mom's face hardened. Whatever game you're playing. Ring, ring, he sang, and every phone in the evidence room started ringing simultaneously. Danielle grabbed her phone. How? The lights went out. Emergency generators kicked in as agents scrambled for weapons. Through the chaos, I saw Marcus's guards crumple to the ground. Gas! Someone shouted. Everyone out! But the doors wouldn't open. Mom? I called through the thickening air. Kyson? Here! They grabbed my arms, pulling me toward the emergency exit. Marcus's laughter echoed through the room. Did you think I didn't have a contingency plan? That they'd let me rot in prison? Armed figures in gas masks burst through the vents. Gunfire erupted. This way! Danielle shoved us behind a filing cabinet, pulling out spare masks from an emergency kit. Put these on! Through the mask's foggy visor, I watched the intruders grab hard drives and weapons from the evidence lockers. They're destroying the evidence, Mom said, her voice muffled. Everything we fought for? Not everything. Kyson pulled out his phone, which was still recording. Live streaming to every news outlet in the country. Say hi to America, Marcus. The masked figures turned toward us. Marcus's voice rang out. Kill them! Danielle returned fire as we ran for the ventilation shaft. Bullets pinged off metal around us. Up, she commanded, giving me a boost. The shaft leads to the parking garage. I crawled through the tight space, hearing Mom and Kyson behind me. The sound of gunfire grew distant. Danielle! I called back. Keep going, she shouted. I'll hold them. Her words cut off in a burst of gunfire. No! Mom tried to turn back, but Kyson pushed her forward. She gave us a chance. Don't waste it. We emerged in the parking garage, alarms blaring throughout the building. My car was just 20 feet away. Georgia, catch! I turned to see Danielle, wounded but alive, toss something from the vent. A flash drive. Insurance policy, she yelled. Now run! We sprinted for the car as more masked figures appeared. I fumbled with the keys as bullets shattered windows around us. Drive! Mom and Kyson dove in as I started the engine. We crashed through the parking gate, tires squealing. In the rearview mirror, I saw the FBI building burning. The drive! Mom gasped. What's on it? Kyson plugged it into his phone. His eyes widened. Names, dates, every corrupt official involved in Project Lighthouse and beyond, including the FBI director, I finished. That's why she retired suddenly. She knew this was coming. Marcus was just a middleman, Mom said. The real power players are still out there. Not for long. Kyson's thumbs flew over his phone. Uploading everything to social media now. Let's see them try to bury this. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Marissa. Turn on the news, she shouted. It's everywhere. The FBI raid, the shootout, everything. They can't cover it up this time. Mom touched Dad's locket, which still hung around her neck. He'd be proud of us. It's not over, I said, taking the highway ramp. They'll come after us again. Let them, Kyson replied, showing us his phone screen filled with viral news alerts. The whole world is watching now. Red and blue lights appeared behind us, but this time we couldn't tell if they were friend or foe. Where to? I asked, gripping the steering wheel. Mom's voice was steel. Somewhere we can finish what your father started, once and for all. The city lights faded behind us as we drove into the darkness, carrying truth like a torch and justice like a sword. The real war was just beginning. The morning sun painted the courthouse steps golden as we watched the FBI director being led away in handcuffs. News cameras flashed like lightning, capturing the moment justice finally won. That's the last one, Danielle said, her arm still in a sling from the evidence room shootout. Every name on that drive, every person involved in Project Lighthouse, all facing charges. My phone buzzed with another news alert. Breaking, international weapons ring. Dismantled, high-level officials implicated. They're calling it the biggest corruption scandal in history, Kyson said, scrolling through updates. Dad's name is everywhere. They're hailing him as the whistleblower who started it all. Mom squeezed my hand. He gave his life to expose this. We finished what he started. Ms. Simmons, reporters called out. How does it feel knowing your husband's murder has finally been solved? Before Mom could answer, more police cars screamed up to the courthouse. Marcus, in orange prison clothes, emerged in chains. Still think you've won? He shouted across the plaza. There will always be more of us. Always be more secrets. You're right, I called back, making him stop. There probably are more secrets, more corruption, more people like you. Then you understand. You can't win. No, Mom stepped forward. We already have, because now everyone knows the truth is out there. Everyone knows there are people willing to fight for it. And next time, Kyson added, we'll be ready. Marcus's face contorted as officers led him away. His empire had crumbled, his powerful friends were falling one by one, and the lighthouse that had hidden his secrets now stood as a monument to truth. Danielle's phone chirped. The task force is ready, she said. You sure about this? I looked at Mom and Kyson. They nodded. We're sure. Inside the courthouse, we found Marissa waiting with a stack of papers. Everything's set, she said. The whistleblower protection program, the new identities, just say the word. No, I replied. We're not hiding. But they still have allies out there, she protested. People who might want revenge. Let them come, Mom said, taking off Dad's locket. We're done living in shadows. She walked to the clerk's desk and placed the locket in an evidence bag. This belongs in the case file. Let everyone see what my husband died protecting. Besides, Kyson grinned, someone has to stick around to keep fighting. Dad taught us that. Danielle handed us each an FBI consultant badge. Then let's make it official. The task force needs people who know what to look for, people who've seen the corruption firsthand. You want us to help investigate other potential projects? I asked. Who better? You three did what an entire federal agency couldn't. Imagine what you could do with actual resources. Mom traced Dad's name on the courthouse wall of honor, newly installed that morning. What do you think, honey? Ready to be a family of investigators? As long as we're together, I said. That's what got us through this. Speaking of together, Kyson pulled out his phone. The support group for families affected by corruption is meeting tonight. They asked if we'd share our story. Our story, Mom repeated softly. Not just about corruption and revenge, but about healing, about finding strength in each other. The courthouse doors opened. Outside, the media waited for statements, for answers, for hope that justice was still possible in a world of shadows. Ready? I asked my family. Ready, they answered. We stepped into the sunlight together, not as victims or vigilantes, but as survivors, as proof that truth could outshine any darkness. My car, the same one that started this whole journey, sat waiting in the parking lot, no longer a symbol of betrayal, but of perseverance. Where to first? Kyson asked as we got in. There's a suspicious banking pattern in Seattle, Danielle said from the back seat. Might be nothing, might be another project. Or, Mom smiled, it might be another chance to make Dad proud. I started the engine, remembering that first morning when I found my car missing. How lost and angry I'd felt. How alone. Never again. Seattle it is, I said, pulling onto the street. But first, breakfast. I'm thinking pancakes. Pancakes? Kyson laughed. We're about to investigate potential international corruption and you want pancakes? Hey, even justice fighters need fuel. Mom's hand found my shoulder. Pancakes sound perfect, honey. Your father always said the best plans start with a good breakfast. As we drove toward our favorite diner, I caught sight of the lighthouse in my rearview mirror. It no longer looked ominous. Just a tower of white stone, its secrets exposed to the light. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold, but they're wrong. The best revenge is served with family, with purpose, and yes, with pancakes. Because in the end, it's not about getting even, it's about getting better, together.
Jackson entered the hospital room where I was hooked up to several machines, his expression smug. "You can't even do household chores, so we might as well get a divorce. And you better give me your assets too," he sneered, not knowing I had secretly amassed assets worth $9 million. Standing beside him was a woman I didn't recognize, who he introduced as Sienna. As he wrapped his arm around her, he handed me the divorce papers with a smirk. "Now I can say goodbye to you. I'll be happy with her, so don't worry," he declared arrogantly. Sienna mockingly said, "Take care, Mrs. Oh, you're not Mrs. anymore. Take care." Their laughter echoed as they left the room, but I knew their joy would be short-lived. Alone, I couldn't help but laugh aloud. It was Friday, and by Monday, the divorce would be processed. I eagerly awaited the freedom it would bring. My name is Alice. I'm a 41-year-old housewife from a family that runs a small farm. Although I don't claim to have many skills, one thing I'm incredibly proud of is my extensive cooking repertoire. Jackson and I, college sweethearts who moved to New York from the countryside, used to share a simple life enriched by the meals I cooked with ingredients sent from home. I believed I had won his heart through his stomach, a belief supported by our shared love for food. We cherished our meals and drives on his days off, exploring quaint eateries and enjoying the simple pleasures of life. Initially, Jackson was kind and appreciative of the care I took in managing our home. However, about 5 years into our marriage, his demeanor shifted dramatically towards control and disdain. Despite his inability to manage any household chores himself, I continued to take care of everything, hoping to preserve the peace and happiness we once shared. Unfortunately, Jackson grew increasingly dismissive and critical, taking my efforts for granted and belittling the life we had built together. As I sat alone in the hospital room, contemplating the impending end of our marriage, I felt a mix of sorrow for what was lost and relief at escaping a relationship that had become suffocating. I resolved to move forward with my life, assured by my hidden assets and the freedom they would afford me. The days of being underestimated and undervalued were coming to an end, and a new chapter was about to begin. Jackson never physically harmed me, but his sharp comments cut deep. He often questioned, "Whose money do you think we are living on?" His words stung, and even though they hurt, I found myself too weary to argue, doubting he'd ever really listen to me. Being a full-time housewife made me feel less than, and I struggled to stand up to him. Jackson had landed a job at a well-known company after college and stayed there for about 6 years before resigning. He would find new jobs quickly, but leave them just as fast. Because of this, our financial situation was always shaky. We tried to cope by looking up ways to save money, but we often found ourselves struggling to make ends meet. Jackson had been at his current company for 1 year and seemed to fit in well with his colleagues, giving me a sliver of hope that maybe this time he'd stay longer. Then, one day, Jackson came home earlier than usual, announcing abruptly, "I'm home. I quit my job." My surprise slipped out unintentionally. "What? Again?" I exclaimed, which only caused his expression to darken. In a rush, I stopped cooking and went over to him, apologizing. "I'm sorry, I was just shocked." He coldly replied, "No welcome back greeting. You're criticizing what I do. You've become quite audacious." I froze, realizing how tense he was. If I said the wrong thing, it might make the situation worse. "I'm sorry," I murmured, hoping to calm the storm. It seemed to placate him momentarily, as he moved to the sofa and turned on the TV. Quietly, I set a beer and glass on the table and asked, "Do you want dinner, or a bath?" "Food and alcohol," he responded curtly. To keep the peace, I fell into the role of the submissive wife. Over our 16-year marriage, I had gradually lost the vibrant sense of self I had at 26. Now, I rarely showed my true feelings. After Jackson ate and drank his fill, he fell asleep on the sofa, snoring loudly. The table was a mess, looking as though a child had eaten there. As I cleaned up, I couldn't help but reminisce about the dreams of a happy married life I once had. The stark contrast between then and now filled me with a profound sense of sadness and loss. I wondered quietly to myself if there might be a way to reclaim some of the joy we had lost, or if it was time to finally stand up for myself and seek happiness elsewhere. As I cleaned up the mess on the table, fallen beer bottles and food scraps scattered like after a child's hurried meal, I couldn't shake the feeling of deep discontent. This wasn't the life I had envisioned. Growing up, I had dreamed of a happy, shared existence, a partnership of mutual respect and support. Now, as I looked at the sleeping figure of Jackson on the sofa, relief briefly washed over me because he hadn't woken up. But that relief was quickly replaced by a growing dread of continuing to live this way. I knew something had to change. Lying in bed that night, unable to sleep, I began to mentally organize my schedule for the next day, steeling myself to face the issues I had long avoided. The prospect of divorce began to feel less like a threat and more like a necessary step towards reclaiming my happiness. The next morning, while Jackson was out job hunting, a routine that had become all too familiar given his history of frequent job changes, I took a decisive step. I went to the city office and signed the divorce papers. It wasn't time to submit them yet, but just having them felt like a shield, a layer of protection against the unpredictability of our relationship. I tucked the signed papers at the bottom of my frequently used bag, a safe hideaway unless Jackson decided to snoop. When Jackson returned home earlier than usual and asked, "Hey, where did you wander off to while I was job hunting?" I responded as calmly as I could, "I went to the stationery store to buy some resumes. I thought you might need them." His mood lightened surprisingly, a shift from his usual suspicion to a brief moment of gratitude as he took the resumes from my hands. "Thanks, that's unusually thoughtful today," he said, before announcing he was going out for drinks with a friend and swiftly exiting the house. His new job at a reputable company offered solid salary and better benefits than he had ever had, and when he was promoted after 2 years, it seemed he might finally settle into a stable career path. Yet, despite these professional successes, his absences for entertainment writer became more frequent, leaving me with brief moments of solitude which I cherished immensely. One such evening, my phone rang. It was my mother, her voice brimming with excitement as she unveiled surprising news, $9 million, Alice. Yes, $9 million. You know the mountains and lands we owned. We don't need them anymore. We had them appraised, and they are worth $7 million. We only need $2 million to enjoy the rest of our lives. So, I think you might want to rethink your life too. Her words, so unexpected and transformative, prompted a profound realization about the opportunities and freedoms I had yet to explore. With newfound courage fueled by the unexpected windfall and the legal documents tucked safely in my bag, I felt ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The once daunting prospect of initiating a divorce now seemed a necessary step toward a future where I could perhaps find the joy and fulfillment that had been missing from my life for far too long. My mother had never hidden her disapproval of Jackson, especially as his behavior grew increasingly controlling over the years. He had even started preventing me from visiting my childhood home, a place that held countless cherished memories. During one of our rare phone conversations, she revealed something astonishing. When she inherited property from my grandmother, she had transferred the title to my name to avoid inheritance taxes. "It's better not to tell Jackson, but the final decision is yours," she concluded before hanging up. The revelation left me torn. Part of me wanted to share the news with Jackson, but another, stronger part wished to keep it secret, to hold on to the freedom that this unexpected windfall could provide. About a week later, I was involved in a minor traffic accident. Although my life was not in danger, the doctors recommended hospitalization for a week to ensure a full recovery. I quickly secured my valuables in the hospital room's drawer before contacting Jackson. "I'm sorry, I got injured," I explained over the phone, only to be met with his immediate concern for his meals rather than my well-being. His response was all too familiar, what about my meals? Frustrated yet resigned, I suggested he manage his meals himself for the week. His retort was swift and biting, not even preparing meals for your husband. What a lazy wife. Then, without waiting for my response, he announced he was coming over. I had planned to discuss the inheritance with him that evening, but his reaction and the coldness in his voice made me reconsider. Lying in the hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines and 4 drips, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity about the nature of our relationship. When Jackson stormed into the hospital room, his demeanor was dismissive and cruel. With a smirk, he said, "You're useless, can't even do housework. Let's get a divorce, and you better pay me compensation too." Standing next to him was a woman I didn't recognize, who looked on with an indifferent gaze. Jackson was obviously unaware of my financial independence, thinking that a divorce under these strange circumstances would leave me vulnerable and desperate. His words, meant to wound, instead gave me a strange sense of liberation. The realization that I no longer had to endure his oppressive behavior or live under his control was empowering. The inheritance from my mother, a secret now more precious than ever, represented a new beginning, one that could offer me the freedom and life I had always dreamed of but had been too constrained to pursue. In that moment, surrounded by the sterile hospital environment yet feeling more free than I had in years, I resolved to take control of my destiny. I decided not to reveal the inheritance. Instead, I would use this resource to build a new life, one far removed from the toxicity that had come to define my marriage to Jackson. The path forward was uncertain and undoubtedly filled with challenges, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. As I lay in the hospital bed, surrounded by the hum of medical equipment, I found myself face to face with Jackson, who carried not only a smirk, but also the divorce papers I had secretly signed as a safeguard, a charm against the day I could no longer bear our strained marriage. "Fine, here are the divorce papers," I said calmly, handing them over. Jackson grabbed them eagerly, his smirk widening. "With this, I can finally say goodbye to you. I'm going to be happy with her," he announced proudly, wrapping his arm around the waist of the woman by his side, whom he introduced as Sienna. Leaning into Jackson, Sienna looked down at me with disdain and mocked, "Take care, madam." "Oh, you're not a madam anymore, so take care, old lady." Their laughter echoed through the room as they left, but I knew their glee was fleeting. Left alone, I burst into laughter. It was Friday, and the divorce wouldn't be processed until Monday. The thought of just 5 days until I could start anew filled me with a mixture of anticipation and relief. The weekend passed quietly, without a single word from Jackson. The stillness was a stark contrast to the years of constant tension and disputes, and though I was unaccustomed to the calm, the nurses encouraged me to embrace the peace and stay relaxed. However, by Monday evening, my phone began to incessantly ring, breaking the tranquility. Jackson's name flashed on the screen over and over. After about 20 minutes of continuous ringing, my patience wore thin, and I answered the call. "Could you not be so persistent?" I asked, my tone even. "What's the meaning of this?" Jackson barked as soon as I picked up, his voice laced with confusion and anger. I couldn't help but laugh, further infuriating him. He was shouting incoherently now, questioning the situation. "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. The divorce papers aren't being accepted, are they?" he demanded, his voice a mix of frustration and disbelief. I chuckled lightly before responding. "Oh, I filed a non-acceptance notification previously," I explained, recalling how often Jackson had impulsively threatened divorce after every argument. "I thought it wouldn't be good if you actually filed for divorce on a whim during one of our fights." There was a pause on the other end as Jackson processed the information. But I don't need that now." "Withdraw it immediately," he commanded, assuming he could still dictate terms. But things were different now. I was no longer the woman who shrank under his sharp words or the weight of his disdain. I was free, standing at the threshold of a new life that awaited me, free from the turmoil that had defined my marriage. As I lay back on my pillow, a smile spread across my face. The relentless ring of the phone had stopped, and in its silence, I found a profound sense of freedom. Jackson's words no longer had the power they once did, and as I looked forward to the official completion of our divorce, I was filled with a sense of peace and empowerment that had been missing for years. This was not just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a new chapter, my chapter, written on my terms, at last. I had reached my limit with Jackson's controlling behavior, and was no longer willing to comply passively with everything he demanded. As he insisted I leave the hospital immediately to deal with the divorce formalities at the municipal office, I stood my ground. I can't do that until I'm discharged. We need to go through the procedures at the municipal office, I replied firmly. Jackson, frustrated and unreasonable, retorted, then discharge now. His demands were utterly selfish and absurd, making me laugh even harder at the desperation in his voice. He was clearly agitated, probably eager to legitimize his relationship with Sienna, the woman he had brought to the hospital on Friday. In his panic, he blurted out, "By the way, was her name Sienna? She's your mistress, right? That's rude to Sienna. Apologize. She's my new wife. We are not divorced yet, so she's technically your mistress, isn't she?" His words were tangled in nonsensical logic. Responding calmly to Jackson's irrational outburst, I chose to strike a nerve. "You'll hear from my lawyer about the division of property." "That's right, property, including the trouble. This time, you'd better share properly." Jackson seemed briefly lifted by a misguided sense of victory, thinking he stood on solid ground. "The responsible party has to pay compensation," I continued, my voice steady and clear. I had always diligently done my household chores, and, of course, I had never cheated on him. It was clear as day that Jackson was the responsible party. "What are you misunderstanding? You're the one who has to give me the assets," Jackson replied, his voice filled with genuine confusion. He likely believed that by not caring for him while I was hospitalized, I would be at fault. Even in an era like my parents', one wouldn't be deemed at fault for such a thing. As I thought about this bitterly, I took the time to explain to him patiently. "What fault of mine are you talking about? Just so you know, not being able to do housework because of my hospitalization doesn't make me the one at fault. You've abandoned taking care of me. If you were a child, it would be considered neglect, but you're an adult and should be able to take care of yourself. That's why it doesn't make me at fault. If I say you're at fault, then you are at fault," he argued, his logic bewildering. A mental image of myself face-palming emerged. Was he really taking me so lightly, thinking such childish reasoning would work? "Finally, get it. Don't you know what's legally defined as grounds for fault? Infidelity, Jackson. That's what leads to a legitimate claim of fault in a divorce, not a spouse being unable to perform household duties due to being in the hospital." As the reality of his situation began to dawn on Jackson, I could see the gears turning in his head. The confrontation had laid bare the unsustainable and skewed foundation on which his arguments rested, and it was clear that the end of our marriage would now proceed on terms grounded in reality, not his distorted version of it. Jackson's assertion that having a new wife negated any fault on his part in our divorce was both absurd and infuriating. Infidelity means having another relationship despite being married. That's why Sienna is my new wife and you're no longer of any use to me, so it doesn't apply, right? He argued smugly. "What are you talking about? Since you were secretly seeing her while we were still married, it's clearly cheating," I countered, struggling to keep my composure against his twisted logic. Jackson seemed unable to grasp the reality of his actions or acknowledge his fault, clinging to his skewed interpretation of right and wrong. "Please communicate through a lawyer from now on." "Goodbye," I said firmly, hanging up the phone before he could protest. Although he called multiple times afterward, I ignored each call, and eventually, he stopped, sinking into silence. The brief respite was a relief, but I knew dealing with Jackson was never straightforward. The next morning brought fresh challenges. From 9 o'clock, my phone rang incessantly. When I finally answered, Jackson bombarded me like a relentless stream of complaints. He was furious, unable to access money from what I assumed was our joint bank account. "Jackson, were you trying to take money from my account by any chance?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Exactly. You're still in the hospital, and I was going to take the money into account, but the card won't work," he fumed, his frustration palpable even through the phone. His lack of understanding was clear. The day before my hospitalization, anticipating potential financial recklessness on his part, I had called the bank to freeze our joint account until I could manage it myself upon discharge. This precaution, though harsh, was necessary to prevent Jackson from squandering my savings during my hospitalization, an action he now seemed determined to contest. "It's unthinkable for you to try to withdraw money from the account of an ex-wife you've divorced," I said, my tone resolute. Yet, Jackson continued, undeterred, "What are you talking about? We are practically strangers now. Why would I do as you say? Act like a proper wife and listen to me." His words were a stark reminder of the disconnect between his perception of our relationship and reality. "We are not legally divorced yet, but we are already strangers," I replied, the finality of my words marking the end of our marital obligations. His insistence that nothing had changed, that I should still perform wifely duties despite his betrayal and our pending divorce, was a painful illustration of how little he respected or understood me. Resigned to the complexity of severing ties with Jackson, I prepared myself for whatever legal battles lay ahead. His inability to grasp the finality of our separation only reinforced my decision to divorce, a decision that, while fraught with logistical and emotional challenges, promised a return to autonomy and peace. Over the phone, Jackson was clearly shocked by my firm refusal, a change from the passive demeanor I had maintained throughout our 19-year marriage. His shock, however, quickly gave way to assertiveness. "Just do as I say. Send the money now and pay the compensation for not doing housework," he demanded. It was a vivid reminder of how Jackson, despite his academic prowess when we first met, often lacked common sense, particularly in understanding the practical and emotional aspects of our relationship. As he grew increasingly frustrated by my resistance, which was unlike anything he had encountered from me before, I couldn't help but reflect on how deeply I had misjudged him as a partner all those years ago. His irritation likely stemmed from having exhausted his readily available cash, and perhaps even from tapping into the living expenses I had carefully set aside at home and from our joint account. Addressing Jackson with the patience one might use for a small child, I firmly stated, "Listen, I'm no longer your submissive wife. We'll settle the property division through a lawyer later on." His response was curt and filled with indignation. "What? You're so insolent. I'm coming over right now." "Just wait," he snapped before hanging up. I was unmoved by his threat. Although he said he was on his way to the hospital, I had already informed the nursing station not to allow anyone in except for my parents, making it unlikely for him to confront me directly. True to his word, Jackson did attempt to visit, but as anticipated, he was stopped at the nurse's station. Meanwhile, my phone continued to ring incessantly, shifting eventually to a barrage of text messages, which I saved as evidence. After some time, it appeared my lawyer had managed to communicate with Jackson, leading to a sudden cessation of his messages. I had hoped this would mark the end of the ordeal. However, just when I thought calm might be restored, the nurse informed me of another visitor, Chloe, a name that brought a smile to my face. Chloe was a friend from the days when I was still single, a fellow enthusiast in the local dining scene, whom I had met through social media. We bonded over our shared culinary adventures and remained close, supporting each other through various life transitions. "Please, let her in," I said, eager for the comfort and camaraderie of an old friend. Chloe's presence was a welcome relief from the turmoil of dealing with Jackson, reminding me of the support systems I still had in place. Her visit was not just a distraction, but a reinforcement of the personal connections that sustained me, especially now, as I navigated the choppy waters of a contentious divorce. Chloe and I had lived close to each other for years, often sharing meals out and exploring new dining spots together. After I got married, our dining outings became less frequent as I needed to save money, but we continued to cherish our friendship through regular meetups for tea and heartfelt conversations. As Chloe walked into my hospital room, her first words were full of genuine concern. "Alice, are you okay from the injury?" "Yes, I'm feeling much better now, thank you," I replied, touched by her caring demeanor. It struck me then how isolated I had felt since the hospitalization. Apart from my parents and the hospital staff, Chloe was the first person to show such concern. "Alice, things are tough for you right now, aren't they?" Chloe's voice held a note of sympathy, which made me pause. I hadn't discussed my situation with anyone but my parents, and I was puzzled about how she knew more. "Why do you ask?" I inquired, a mix of curiosity and concern in my voice. Chloe hesitated before dropping a bombshell. "You know Sienna, the young girl, right? She's having an affair with your husband, isn't she?" My shock was palpable. "What? How do you know about?" "Wait, you know her?" Chloe's response was quiet and reluctant. "Actually, she's my niece." I was floored, not only by the revelation of the affair, but by the unexpected family connection. It felt like the room stood still in silence, a stark contrast to Chloe's usually vibrant presence. Chloe continued, "You see, Sienna recently told her mother, my sister, that she's getting married. And what's more shocking is that her partner is 47 years old. When I saw the photo, it was your husband. I was so surprised. I've already told my sister. I'm so sorry for all the trouble my niece has caused you, Alice," Chloe added, her eyes welling up with tears. "Don't apologize, Chloe. It's not your fault," I assured her, my own emotions swirling. Chloe looked distraught, and it pained me to see her so upset over the actions of her niece. "I'm thinking of demanding compensation from Sienna." "I can't let this go," Chloe said firmly. "But if I do, does this mean our relationship will end?" "Of course not," I replied immediately. "I want to continue being friends with you, Alice. I'll make sure Sienna pays compensation. Neither my sister nor I can forgive what she's done. We'll keep a close eye on her." I felt a profound sense of gratitude for Chloe's support. We had been friends for over 18 years, and I didn't want to lose such a precious connection over the misdeeds of my estranged husband and his mistress. "I've scheduled a meeting with them tomorrow," Chloe disclosed. "I'd like you to come with me." "Of course, I'll be there," I responded without hesitation. "And I can also provide photos as evidence." The prospect of confronting this painful chapter was daunting, but with Chloe by my side, I felt a renewed sense of strength. Her loyalty and the depth of our friendship were more valuable than ever as I faced the challenges ahead. The day after I was discharged from the hospital, I found myself in a private dining room at an upscale restaurant, facing a situation I could hardly have imagined just weeks before. Across from me, Jackson and his new partner, Sienna, were already seated, indulging in an elaborate traditional meal. The audacity of their calm enjoyment struck me as they ate, seemingly without a care. Jackson, without looking up from his plate, called out to me as I entered, "You finally made it. Did you bring the money? Remember, you are paying for this meal." Beside him, Sienna smirked, clearly enjoying the discomfort they thought they were causing me. Instead of responding to Jackson's provocation, I calmly addressed them both, "Please handle the payment yourselves. Moreover, I came here not to join your meal, but to address the division of assets between us." Ignoring Jackson's dismissive snort and his comment about my attractiveness, my lawyer and I took our seats, ready to lay out the evidence we had gathered. We began by presenting a series of legal documents that detailed Jackson's liabilities, followed by the proposed documents for property division. Lastly, I revealed the photos provided by Chloe, which captured Sienna and Jackson together, and shockingly, Sienna with another unknown man entering a hotel. Wait, why, hey, Sienna, what is this? Jackson's voice faltered as he and Sienna were visibly shaken by the images. At that moment, Chloe entered the room, her timing impeccable. I took those photos, she declared, her gaze stern as she looked at her niece and Jackson. Chloe continued, addressing the room with a cool, collected voice, I've been friends with Alice for 18 years, and what you two have done is utterly despicable. Also, Sienna, you mentioned that the baby you're carrying is his, but given your actions, who knows who the father really is? Stunned, I listened as this was the first I heard of a pregnancy. Sienna's demeanor changed abruptly, and under the heavy gaze of those in the room, she confessed, no, I'm sorry, I lied about the pregnancy. Please forgive me. She explained that she had targeted wealthy older men, and Jackson was just another mark. He had lavished her with designer goods, and she had been led to believe she could continue a comfortable life without work, perhaps occasionally stepping out with other men as she pleased. Jackson, his face a mixture of shock and realization, stammered, I'm truly sorry, but I can't give you anything. I don't have the money. His confidence had vanished, replaced by a desperate plea for understanding. You're going to work part-time diligently every month and repay me, I asserted firmly. You won't have any time for leisure until you've paid back what is owed. The confrontation in the restaurant not only brought the truth to light, but also marked a turning point. I left the room feeling a mix of relief and vindication, knowing that the charade was over. Chloe's support and the legal evidence had exposed the reality of the situation, allowing me to finally close this painful chapter and move forward with dignity. After a dramatic confrontation at the restaurant, the truth about Jackson and Sienna's deceitful actions was laid bare. As we left the restaurant, Sienna appeared crestfallen, deeply affected by the unfolding events. Chloe, ever the supportive friend, mentioned she would bring Sienna back for a more sincere apology and escorted her out, leaving Jackson and me alone. Jackson, visibly shaken by the revelations and the loss of his facade, approached me, attempting to salvage whatever he could from the wreckage of our relationship. Look, it seems I was deceived. I can live without Alice, right? We still have the divorce papers here, can we start over? You've always been a housewife, so you can't possibly work now, can you? His tone, meant to be flattering, came off as desperate and manipulative. I met his plea with a cold, unmoved gaze, waiting patiently for him to finish his appeal. Once he had, I responded with a calm, assured smile. I can live just fine without you. I'll be taking the divorce papers and filing them shortly. Also, I never mentioned this, but my personal net worth is currently around 9 million, so I can live comfortably without working for the rest of my life, rest assured. Jackson's reaction to the revelation of my fortune was one of shock and disbelief. 9 million. Why did you keep such a fortune a secret? He stammered. I was about to tell you when you started making a fuss about divorce. This money is my personal inheritance, so it doesn't count towards marital assets. It has nothing to do with you, I explained calmly. As Jackson looked on in utter despair, my lawyer promptly presented some documents for him to sign. Without wasting any more time, we left the restaurant and immediately filed for divorce, officially ending our nearly 2-decade-long marriage. In the aftermath of our split, Sienna, under pressure from her mother and Chloe, transferred some money to my account as part of her compensation. Her mother, furious about the situation, made Sienna leave university and work non-stop at a relative's inn to prepare adequate compensation. Jackson, on the other hand, faced severe consequences. Disowned by his in-laws and without their support, he was forced to take out a loan to settle his debts with me. Additionally, it came to light that he had been meeting Sienna at a hotel during work hours, which led to his dismissal from his job. He now juggles multiple plumber jobs to manage his financial obligations. As for me, after receiving such a significant sum, I wasn't sure what to do with it initially, so I donated a portion to charity. I then decided to move to the countryside with the remaining funds, embracing a tranquil, luxurious single life. Chloe and I continued to strengthen our bond. We regularly went on food tours and short trips, enjoying our freedom. Considering our new lifestyle, I suggested that perhaps we should live together, sharing daily deliveries and meals. Initially hesitant, Chloe agreed when I elaborated on the practical benefits. With moving preparations set to start next week, I look forward to a new chapter, living joyfully and authentically, true to myself and free from the past's chains. This new beginning marks not just a change in residence, but a profound shift in how I value and live my life, surrounded by people who truly care and support me. Amelia, still labeled thoughtless and insignificant by those around her, faced criticism during a family trip. Her mother-in-law, seizing the moment when her son, Amelia's husband, stepped away, voiced her displeasure directly. The journey, intended as a joyful escape Amelia had organized at her husband's request, swiftly turned sour. At the sharp jabs of her mother-in-law, Amelia resolved to remove herself from the situation, her departure underscoring her disinterest in the ensuing family dynamics. Amelia, a committed professional thriving in a day-care assistant, had adapted to a mostly remote work setup since her marriage, which afforded her ample home time. Her husband, Henry, held himself in high regard, often prioritizing appearances and indulging in extravagant spending, all without contributing financially to the household, a fact Amelia had been oblivious to during their courtship. Over time, living together peeled back the layers of his facade, revealing his true persona. Henry's mother, a woman proud and vocal about her son's every minor achievement, seemed to embody the stereotype of a mother excessively devoted to her son. Although Amelia was somewhat prepared for this and willing to accommodate it to an extent, the reality proved challenging. Her mother-in-law's obstinate nature and dismissal of other perspectives, including her own husband's, only compounded the difficulties. She harbored a clear disdain for Amelia, frequently undermining her by dismissing her remote work as trivial and equating it to mere leisure at the computer. Despite the challenges, Amelia's remote work was legitimate and full-time, though her mother-in-law painted it as negligible and accused Amelia of laziness. While her husband understood her professional commitments, he seldom corrected his mother's harsh misconceptions, leaving Amelia to navigate the strained family dynamics largely on her own. Despite his presence, my husband often ignores issues between his mother and me, even when these occur right in front of him. He tends to sidestep these confrontations, suggesting that we handle it well amongst ourselves, effectively leaving the burden on me. He prefers to remain uninvolved, claiming he wants to avoid trouble. This detachment reached a peak when, after persistent requests for his support on a similar issue, he abruptly handed me completed divorce papers. Though I was deeply hurt, the daunting notion that divorcing might be harder than marrying made me reconsider and ultimately yield to his stance. It became clear to me that my husband always puts his mother first. This realization was frustrating, but it also motivated me to devise strategies to cope with her abrasive manner while diplomatically keeping the peace. My decision not to pursue a divorce wasn't due to a change of heart about our relationship. Rather, I sensed my husband believed I was too enamored with him to ever leave. His arrogance seemed to grow each day, and while it's endearing to see a child mimic adulthood, it's quite off-putting when an adult does it. I've since learned to overlook his boastful declarations and disregard his antics. Another reason for not seeking a divorce is our living situation. My husband's job requires us to live far from my in-laws, limiting our interactions to once or twice a year, a frequency I felt I could endure. During a time when everyone was excited about the possibility of 9 consecutive days off by cleverly scheduling vacations around weekends, both of us were busy working. For me, US holidays have little impact since I adjust my schedule to international demands. My husband, on the other hand, did not take the extended break. However, after returning from work one day, he suddenly proposed an overseas vacation, inspired by his colleagues who had arranged such a break. His pride in this plan only fueled his regret at not having done the same earlier. His suggestion caught me off guard, Not just because of its suddenness, but also because of its impracticality. He had never traveled abroad and didn't even have a passport. Recognizing these limitations, I proposed a domestic trip instead, assuring him that there wouldn't be any language barriers or other issues if he traveled with me, given my fluency in multiple languages. During my student years, I had the opportunity to study abroad and enjoyed numerous solo international trips. Beyond English, I am comfortable conversing in Spanish and can manage a bit of Chinese when needed. When my mother became fascinated with Korean dramas, I even started learning Korean with her. Although I haven't had many chances to use it, making me somewhat less confident in my skills. Despite my linguistic abilities, obtaining passports isn't an instantaneous process, something my husband didn't quite grasp. I suggested planning an overseas trip during the summer or winter when we'd have ample time, but he dismissed my advice. Instead, he impulsively chose a destination, took leave without consulting anyone, and expected me to fit everything into our schedule. It wasn't just a vacation, he envisioned a family tour without considering the logistics involved. He nonchalantly declared that English would suffice since it's a universal language, believing just the two of us would manage fine abroad. But then, he casually added that we should take his mother along, implying that managing both their first-time international travels would be my responsibility. He framed it as an act of filial piety that could potentially endear me to them. Presenting these plans as if they were to my benefit, he seemed to think he was doing me a favor. Arguing felt pointless. So, I silently went along with his plans, but I also hatched a plan of my own. Starting with the passport applications for my husband and mother-in-law, I took care of booking flights and hotels. It was a significant amount of work, but necessary to execute my idea flawlessly. On the day of our departure, my mother-in-law, oblivious to my efforts, cheerfully praised her son, expecting nothing less than business-class seats for our long journey. I knew my husband likely took all the credit, boasting about making all the arrangements and planning the itinerary. In reality, I had orchestrated everything, while they had simply handed over the responsibility to me. Having minimal familiarity with navigating airports, my travel companions wandered off to explore on their own while I managed the check-in and boarding processes. They seemed to roam aimlessly, even during the dull moments, and I struggled to locate them afterwards. The airport staff even offered to make an announcement over the intercom for us. It was all because Amelia didn't inform us of the boarding gate, causing unnecessary chaos, yet they showed no regret. Meanwhile, Amelia seemed intent on enjoying the trip solo, neglecting us completely. Throughout the flight, they were fairly quiet, but it was still a source of annoyance and embarrassment each time they summoned a flight attendant. After enduring the flight and completing the immigration formalities in the destination country, I was looking forward to a restful evening at the hotel. However, just as we were about to leave the airport, my husband abruptly handed me his luggage, announcing he needed the restroom, and dashed off. It was perplexing that he was the only one feeling unwell when we all shared the same meals. Perhaps his overenthusiastic interaction with his favorite flight attendant was to blame. Amelia, lacking consideration, questioned the duration of her stay, undermining the trip I had planned with my son, suggesting it was a special mother-son vacation that didn't require her presence. She accused Amelia of being a freeloader, asserting that she had no right to enjoy the trip without contributing financially. Despite the harsh words, I decided it was best to leave. Handing the luggage back to my mother-in-law and keeping only my carry-on, I walked away, leaving her stunned with my decision. She couldn't believe her own suggestion for me to leave had been taken seriously. I managed to suppress my laughter. My husband, frequently visiting the restroom, didn't see me depart. Fortunately, I secured a ticket back to America. On the plane, I contemplated how differently things might have unfolded if our relationship had been stronger. I might have enjoyed being included more thoroughly in the trip. Acting as a tour guide for my mother-in-law and her son was more stressful than rewarding, so I opted out. Imagining them fumbling without me brought a smirk to my face, especially considering their limited language skills. Sure, they could use a translation app, but I doubted my husband, who loved to appear more important than he was, would resort to using his smartphone for help. After taking a few day tours, I arrived safely at the luxury hotel where my parents were staying. I had arranged a luxury getaway in upstate New York for them, at the insistence of my husband, Henry, who had always preached respect for my parents. They enjoyed a scenic route, relishing the views and meals along the way. I surprised them by arriving earlier than expected, and their astonishment grew when I explained my abrupt departure. Henry tried to reach me repeatedly, bombarding my phone with calls and messages, which I chose to ignore. Turning off my phone, I fully immersed myself in the joy of the day with my parents. The drama unfolded further when I finally picked up a call from the embassy upon returning home. They explained that after Henry had come out of the restroom, he was shocked to find his mother alone, and furious that I wasn't there. Unable to contact me, he attempted to navigate to the hotel on his own. Unfortunately, he fell prey to a scam by a seemingly helpful stranger who spoke broken English. They promised to guide him to the hotel, but instead robbed him of all his money, passport, and valuables, even stripping his mother of her jewelry. Found destitute on the street by the police, he was referred to the embassy for assistance. The administrative assistant contacted me, requesting I come to retrieve him. Henry was unable to access any funds since his wallet, containing all his bank cards, was stolen. Despite the unfortunate events, the experience underscored the importance of self-reliance and cautious trust when traveling. When I was questioned about why I, a stranger, had to undertake certain tasks, I clarified that I was no longer married to the man involved. In truth, I had held onto the divorce papers he had once angrily thrown at me. Initially, I hesitated to file for divorce, fearing the complications it might bring. However, this time, I had reached my breaking point. After completing the necessary paperwork, I landed back in the States and headed straight to the hotel. To my relief, the divorce process concluded smoothly and without any objections. I had already secured a new apartment, and the lease was signed during my travel preparations. The idea of using the furniture I once shared with my ex-husband, Henry, was unbearable. Thus, in my new home, I decided to start fresh with all new furnishings. I packed for both my trip and my move, taking only my work tools and favorite outfits. The rest could be shipped to my new address at a scheduled time. The embassy staff asked no further questions, and the conversation ended there. It later came to light that my former in-laws had intervened to help Henry and his mother return to the States. Henry, unable to control his anger, confronted me, accusing me of divorcing him without his knowledge and abandoning him. I reminded him that the divorce was his idea initially, as he was the one who presented the papers. His reaction was incredulous, questioning my tactics and how much more I intended to embarrass him. In response, I could have shared an embarrassing story about him being a regular at an adult entertainment club, deeply involved with a particular dancer. He had been squandering money on her rather than contributing to our household, which had led to substantial debts. A debt collection agency had even contacted him, a fact I knew because of a letter addressed to Henry at our home. His reckless spending and the dancer's manipulative tactics, which aimed to deter his visits by demanding ever more lavish gifts, were off-putting. I wondered how Henry would react if he knew the full extent of his actions and their consequences. It's quite the embarrassing tale, isn't it? I warned Henry that if he continued to make a scene or contacted me again, I would reveal everything to his employer. The idea of being disliked by the woman he was obsessed with would be a devastating blow to him, given his personality. After I mentioned this, Henry's tone shifted dramatically. He muttered something inaudible in a weak voice and ended the call. A few days later, I received a call from my ex-father-in-law. Surprisingly, he informed me that he had divorced my ex-mother-in-law. While we were no longer related, he seemed eager to share insights into her character, perhaps because we had both suffered from her behavior. He had grown suspicious of her activities, and, upon investigating, discovered that she had drained his retirement savings on beauty treatments and cosmetic procedures. As I'm not well versed in such matters, I was completely taken aback. When he sought a woman's perspective, I was at a loss since I hadn't noticed any significant changes myself. I even questioned him about the effectiveness of these treatments, considering the amount spent with little visible improvement. It seemed like a waste of money. Now destitute, my ex-mother-in-law turned to her son, Henry, for support. However, Henry was drowning in debt from his divorce and had even lost his apartment due to unpaid rent. He and his mother were now living in a dilapidated apartment. Despite their dire circumstances, his mother continued her expensive beauty regimens without any intention of finding work, further burdening Henry. I heard he was working non-stop to cover both their living expenses and her beauty treatments. The irony was that despite their declining living standards, they still strived to maintain a facade of grandeur. Rumors suggested that the quality of the beauty treatments had deteriorated significantly, and she had visibly aged. As for me, I was enjoying the peace of living alone, focusing on improving my work and valuing the freedom to manage my life and finances independently. This whole situation served as a reminder of the importance of living within one's means. I'm Aria, and I am 29 years old. For the past decade, I have dedicated myself to managing our household. My husband, Dylan, works as a doctor. Although we do not have children, we have generally led a content life. However, everything turned upside down one evening when Dylan returned home unusually late and revealed something completely unexpected. He wanted a divorce and was planning to marry someone else. His words left me utterly stunned. Dylan explained that our marriage had never been about love. It was merely a practical arrangement desired by his parents, and I seemed like a suitable partner at the time. We hardly knew each other before we got married, sharing only our last name as a commonality. Perhaps naively, I was charmed by the coincidence of our matching surnames, which led us to hasten into marriage. For years, it seemed we were managing just fine, despite the lack of a deep emotional connection. I never anticipated a divorce, especially after being together for so long. The revelation of his affair was shocking. Dylan confessed that he had met a nurse at his hospital about a year ago, and was captivated by her. He complained about our life together being mundane, and claimed he could no longer tolerate what he described as an unbearable existence with me. His harsh words were deeply hurtful. As I grappled with these revelations, Dylan disclosed yet another shocking fact. Our marriage was never legally recognized because he had never registered it officially. This meant that technically, we were never legally married, which he intended to use to his advantage to avoid any obligations in the divorce. This deceit felt like a profound betrayal, as if the years we had spent together meant nothing. Our agreement when we got married was that I would take care of the home, and he would handle all external affairs, including legal ones. I couldn't understand why he would betray me this way, to which he coldly responded that he had never planned to make our marriage official, as he was saving himself for someone he truly loved. He argued that he had felt trapped into the marriage due to pressure from his parents and believed marrying me, a willing housekeeper, would ease his daily life given his demanding career. This confession only deepened my sense of betrayal and heartbreak. Despite everything, I had to agree to the divorce, although it shattered me. This moment not only marked the collapse of our marriage, but also the realization that it had been built on deception from the start. Being a housekeeper was quite beneficial for you. It meant you could enjoy good meals and have a place to stay without the burden of working. It seems you were also eager to get married, perhaps feeling the pressure, as many of your friends tied the knot. Although we were never legally married, everyone viewed you as the wife of a doctor. Our 7-year relationship was mutually advantageous. It was merely a convenient arrangement that is ending today. You should appreciate the good times we had. Now, you need to learn to be independent and not depend on others. And one more thing, do not discuss our situation with my parents. If you stir things up, it could have consequences for your father, especially since he runs a medical equipment sales company and has a business relationship with the hospital I work at. A connection that exists because of our supposed marriage. If you cause trouble, I might end that contract as a form of retaliation. You were naive to be deceived, and it's sad to see you left with nothing, or so he mocked. But the truth was, he was the one in the dark. I had to laugh at the irony. "What's so funny?" he asked, bewildered. "It's astonishing that you're a doctor, yet so uninformed," I replied. "I've known about your affair and the fact that you never filed our marriage registration. That's why I've been quietly preparing, waiting for the right moment to confront you. For the past 8 months, I had suspected my husband of cheating but lacked concrete proof. So, I hired a private detective who confirmed he was indeed having an affair with a nurse from his hospital. They were seen entering a hotel together. Additionally, from their conversations, it became clear that we were not legally married. I overheard him telling his mistress at a cafe that they didn't have to worry about alimony or splitting assets since he never submitted our marriage registration. This revelation explained why he always kept me away from handling any official documents. It was all becoming clear. I found myself in disbelief, grappling with how such a thing could happen. It was indeed rare for a marriage registration to be neglected for a decade, though not entirely unheard of. This is too much. Am I just supposed to accept this? I pondered, feeling the sting of deception. Actually, it's not over yet, my friend reassured me, suggesting a way forward. Let's make him realize the consequences of deceiving you for all these years. With that, I began working closely with the investigator, carefully plotting without my husband's knowledge. When confronted, my husband nonchalantly dismissed his responsibility. "So what if you knew we were never officially married? That doesn't change anything about my actions with other women," he claimed, attempting to downplay his infidelity. "You thought I was ignorant, but it turns out you're the one lacking knowledge," I retorted. "Legally, we might be considered to be in a common law marriage, and you might be surprised to learn that I can still claim alimony and divide our property." He was visibly shocked, not knowing that a de facto marriage could still bind him legally. "Really? You can make claims in a common law relationship?" he asked incredulously. "Yes, under certain conditions, which, from what I see, we meet," I explained. "The criteria for a common law marriage include a mutual intention to marry and living together in a manner akin to a married couple. For instance, we held a wedding ceremony, and everyone, including our friends and family, recognizes us as a couple. We've also shared a household for over 7 years, managing our finances together like any married couple would." Realizing he was at a disadvantage, my husband's confidence waned. His previous bravado vanished as he realized the legal standing I held. I continued, "I'm not just going to let this slide. I've consulted with a lawyer, and I'm fully prepared to claim alimony and divide our property." Seeing his pale face, I knew he understood the gravity of the situation. "But you're unemployed. Do you plan to rely on your parents after all this?" he challenged, trying to undermine my independence. "Didn't I tell you? I've been preparing for this," I replied confidently, assured in my next steps and no longer the victim he presumed me to be. I had already secured a job starting next month, and was eyeing a new place to live. "Don't worry about me," I assured him. While he had underestimated me as just a naive homemaker, the tables had turned. "I'll make sure to discuss this with your parents, just so you're aware. Do you not care what happens to your father? If they want to break the contract, let them," I declared firmly. "You might have been the initial link to the hospital, but it was my father's company and his hard work that sustained the contract. Whether they decide to maintain the contract or not is their choice. Let's see if they'll terminate a contract just because the doctor's wife of 14 years wasn't legally his wife. If they do, it only reveals the shallow depth of their trust. We'll simply find another hospital to partner with." As I pulled out my phone, his anxiety became palpable. You're not calling your parents, are you? That's exactly what I'm doing, I replied. Our parents think we are still married. It's only right to inform them if this relationship is ending. Surprisingly, he began to plead. Please, let me talk to them first. Don't call. You know how strict my parents are. If they find out, I'm in deep trouble. What does that have to do with me? I countered. Are you seriously asking me to hide the truth because your parents are strict? You could have declined the marriage from the start if you didn't intend to commit. After 14 years of a marriage that only served you, you're afraid of them finding out. I can't accept such a convenient excuse. But I will make sure both your parents and mine hear the truth from me. So, I called both sets of parents. All four were stunned upon hearing my story. A meeting was quickly arranged at our house. I've heard everything over the phone, my father-in-law began sternly. Is it true that you pretended to be married for 14 years without submitting a marriage registration? Speak up, you foolish son. It's true, I didn't submit it, my husband confessed. Why would you do such a thing? Didn't you think about how Arya would feel? His father pressed. I had no choice, he responded weakly. No choice, you say? How can you even say that? His mother interjected. It's actually your fault, both of you. I didn't want to get married yet, but you started looking for a bride, arranging meetings, trying to force a marriage on me. You're the one who agreed to the marriage, aren't you? I reminded him. I had to agree. If I had refused, you would have made a fuss about it, he admitted. So I decided to go along with it. If I was resolved to marry, why didn't I submit the marriage registration? I read about a man on the internet who was in the same situation. He didn't want to marry, but had to because of his parents. He lived a married life without submitting the registration, then revealed the truth when he found someone he truly loved. That's appalling, his father concluded. And what happened to that guy in the end? He's now married to the person he truly loves and has a real marriage, my husband replied, realizing the stark contrast to our situation. As we sat together, a serious conversation began to unfold. I had always dreamed of a genuine marriage filled with love, one where my partner and I would build a joyful home, cherish each other, and create countless happy memories. During our wedding, we vowed to never forget to look out for one another and to cultivate a household brimming with laughter. Those words, once spoken with such hope, now hung heavily in the air. My parents had remained quiet until now, but the recent developments compelled them to speak. They had initially been reassured by my partner's promise of happiness and sincerity, which seemed certain given his respected profession as a doctor. However, they were now confronting the harsh reality that their trust had been misplaced. For 7 years, my partner had deceived us by not officially registering our marriage, undermining the very foundation of the commitment we believed we shared. The room was filled with tension when my parents accused him of planning to leave me for someone else. They questioned whether someone who so carelessly disregarded our relationship could ever truly commit to a genuine marriage with anyone else. The betrayal was not just personal, but extended to professional threats as well. He had warned that if his deceit were revealed, he would terminate the business dealings with my family's company. Amidst threats and accusations, my father's anger reached a boiling point. He couldn't believe that the person we had welcomed into our family could cause such pain and chaos. He grabbed my partner by the collar, overwhelmed by a mix of anger and disappointment. My father-in-law, trying to mediate the escalating situation, pleaded for calm, but the damage was too deep. Finally, my partner's parents intervened, apologizing for their son's irresponsible actions and promising to rectify the situation. They decided to take him back to his childhood home to ensure he could not continue his reckless behavior. As for me, my parents urged me to return home and rest, promising to handle everything and reassuring me that I had their full support during this trying time. In the silence that followed, the depth of the deception sank in, leaving us all to ponder the gravity of trust and the pain of betrayal. I was utterly drained and disillusioned. Despite their gentle words and offers to help, I decided not to return to my parents' home just yet. I had matters to settle and needed my own space to think and plan. What lay ahead was a crucial phase, preparing for the final legal confrontation with the man I had once called my husband. My immediate task was to gather evidence to establish our common law marriage, aiming to secure alimony and an equitable division of our shared assets. A few weeks later, I sat across from my lawyer, discussing the strategy. My soon-to-be ex-husband, however, was struggling with the idea. Why should I split my assets? She hasn't worked in 14 years, not a single day. I've paid for everything, the furniture, clothes, food. And now you're telling me to just hand over half of my hard-earned money, he protested, clearly agitated at the thought of sharing his wealth. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, the lawyer responded calmly. The earnings and the household items you bought are part of the marital assets that need to be divided. You need to understand that the work she did at home, managing chores and possibly caring for children, has significant economic value. He scoffed, dismissing the importance of my contributions. That's irrelevant now. On the contrary, it's highly relevant. A homemaker is entitled to a fair division of property because managing a household and caring for children are valuable tasks. You were able to work and earn an income because she maintained your home life. Don't underestimate that, the lawyer countered with a firm tone. As the discussion turned to alimony, the lawyer laid out the figures. We are seeking $200,000 in alimony, he declared. $200,000. That's too much for a relationship that was never officially recognized as a marriage, he exclaimed, incredulous. The amount reflects the duration and impact of your actions. While typical alimony claims in common law relationships might range from $25,000 to $55,000, your case is different. You led her to believe you were married for 14 years, and then attempted to leave her abruptly for someone else. It's only fair that the settlement acknowledges the severity of your deceit, the lawyer explained. He was silent, unable to formulate a response to the rational argument laid before him. Eventually, he grudgingly accepted the terms. Taking a further step, I had my lawyer send a notice of the alimony claim to his mistress, a nurse who worked in the same hospital. She was undoubtedly shocked by the claim, especially since he had likely assured her there would be no financial repercussions from their relationship. Wait a minute, this isn't what you told me, I could almost hear her say, her voice filled with disbelief and confusion. This marked a turning point, as the reality of the situation began to set in for everyone involved. When I confronted him at the hospital with the alimony claim notice, he was visibly shaken. What do you want? I told you not to talk to me here, he whispered urgently. Holding up the document, I replied, you said there wouldn't be any alimony because we weren't legally married. What's all this then? Panicked, he suggested we discuss it later, away from the prying eyes of colleagues and patients. Let's talk about this later, not here. There are too many people around. We'll both be in trouble if this turns into a rumor. But I was beyond caring about discretion. I can't pay this kind of alimony. You said it was okay, so you should handle it, I insisted. What? I won't pay a penny. You wanted this relationship. You said I was the only one for you, that you wanted to marry me, he retorted, trying to quiet me down as heads began to turn. Just so you know, I'm not the one at fault here. If you want to make things right with your wife, do it yourself. Tell her I don't owe her a penny, that you'll take care of everything, I shot back, loud enough for others to overhear. Our heated exchange escalated quickly and soon, the entire hospital was buzzing about their affair. The final nail in the coffin came when my father decided to pull the plug on his business dealings with the hospital due to the scandal. As he submitted the termination request, the hospital, already abuzz with rumors, hesitated. Excuse me for asking, but is the reason for cancelling the contract related to Dr. Dillon's affair? They inquired. Yes, a nurse presumed to be involved caused quite a scene. I never expected it to turn out like this, my father admitted. The hospital staff was shocked. You mean he never submitted the marriage registration? Weren't you aware? All my father knew was that despite claiming to be married, Dylan had carried on an affair. The revelation that he had never officially registered our marriage spread like wildfire through the hospital. Dr. Dylan deceived his wife for 14 years by not submitting a marriage registration, and he had an affair with a nurse. How low? How could he do that? Can someone really not notice for 14 years? The staff murmured among themselves. It turned out that my maiden name being the same as my married name, and Dylan handling all the official paperwork, had kept the deception a secret for so long. The rumors not only circulated among the hospital staff, but also reached the patients, casting Dylan and his mistress in a harsh light. Unable to withstand the growing scrutiny and cold stares, both Dylan and his mistress eventually resigned from the hospital. As my father later recounted to me, the fallout was a harsh but necessary end to a decade of deception. Yes, I did manage to secure the alimony. Both he and his mistress made the payments. Initially, she resisted, claiming she had been misled, but our lawyer clarified that such a defense wouldn't stand in court. Eventually, she agreed to pay. Dad, did the contract get cancelled after all? I asked, curious about the repercussions at the hospital. No, that's off the table. He resigned, and because our company is well regarded, the hospital requested us not to cancel the contract. We respected their request, Dad explained. It was a relief to hear that things had worked out somewhat smoothly in the end. After settling these issues, I started anew, moving to a different city and embracing a fresh start. A year and a half later, my life had taken a happier turn. I had remarried, this time to a colleague. Unexpectedly, my ex-husband reached out, having somehow learned of my new marriage. Is it true you got remarried? He inquired, his tone mixed with curiosity and something else I couldn't quite place. Yes, I'm married, I confirmed. His next words were tinged with bitterness. You betrayed me, he accused. Betray? We were never legally married, so I didn't think it would matter to you, I replied, keeping my voice calm despite his attempt to unsettle me. That's a different matter. Things are different now. We are completely separated, so my new life has nothing to do with you. Was that why you contacted me? I pressed, seeking his true intentions. He faltered, then retorted, of course you're still unmarried since you probably haven't submitted a marriage registration. You're that kind of woman. But his assumptions were wrong. Unfortunately for you, my husband isn't the type to do such things. He's fully aware of what happened with you, and to avoid any anxiety on my part, we went to the office together to submit our marriage registration. Sadly for you, things aren't as you thought, I informed him, correcting his misconception. I could sense his disappointment, as he absorbed the fact that I was genuinely happy. I can somewhat understand your wish for me to be unhappy, given your own misery, but sorry, we are happily married, I concluded, ending the call. I don't know what sort of life he leads now, but unless he changes his selfish ways, it's unlikely he'll find true happiness. I'm Ava, and at 23 years old, I am living a somewhat unconventional life. Unlike my peers, I don't hold a full-time job. Ever since my middle school days, I've been rather reclusive. I started high school, but didn't finish, so my formal education ended with middle school. Since then, I've been residing at my parents' house, juggling part-time work and occasionally picking up graphic designer. I have an older brother named Thomas, who is 5 years my senior. Thomas and I are like night and day. He excels in sports, enjoys a wide circle of friends, and is incredibly sociable, a stark contrast to my more introverted nature. During our younger years, Thomas seemed almost embarrassed by my presence. He never brought friends home, and would outright ignore me if we ever bumped into each other in public places like the local convenience store. It was as if he preferred others not to know we were related. I resigned myself to this situation, treating it like a distant issue that didn't directly affect me. Things changed somewhat when Thomas went off to college. He moved out, and with his departure, I stopped fretting over our strained relationship. Time passed, and soon there were murmurs of Thomas getting married as he approached his 27th birthday, a development that wasn't altogether surprising. Plans were made for him to bring his fiancée to meet our parents. On the day of their visit, I decided to be there, thinking it might be a good opportunity to foster a better connection with my family. The day arrived, and Thomas walked into our house precisely on time. His reaction upon seeing me sitting with our parents was one of brief confusion. His fiancée followed, entering with a polite apology for the intrusion. Her gaze quickly shifted between us, her expression revealing her puzzlement. Clearly, Thomas hadn't mentioned me. My parents introduced themselves, conveniently omitting my presence. The fiancée seemed to accept their greeting, although her polite smile carried a hint of confusion. Growing up, comparisons between Thomas and me were constant. Our parents often remarked, "If your brother can do it, why can't you?" A mantra that echoed throughout our childhood and evolved into more cutting remarks as we grew older. At times, I felt dismissed as nothing more than a burden. It seemed that my parents intended to sideline me during this meeting as well. As my mother rose to fetch more drinks, she whispered sharply, "Why are you here? Go back to your room." I had joined the gathering hoping to bridge gaps between us, but it seemed to only reinforce the existing divides. Despite the discomfort, I remained seated, not ready to retreat just yet. Thomas's fiancée, introduced as Delilah, shared my age, but exuded an elegance and composure that set her apart. There was an unspoken air about her suggesting that she was not someone to approach lightly. As the meeting progressed, I observed and listened, still hoping to find my place within the family dynamic, even as the challenges persisted. Thomas seemed visibly uncomfortable with my presence at the family meeting. He introduced his fiancée to our parents, yet he completely ignored me, as if I were invisible. The discussions about the wedding concluded, and casual conversation took over, but my brother's demeanor towards me didn't change. At one point, he did ask, "What do you usually do, Ava?" But before I could respond, he quickly cut me off, telling Delilah, "Wait, you don't need to talk to her." Clearly surprised by his remark, Delilah just nodded. My mother then added, "That's right, don't worry about it," and my father dismissively referred to me as just a stranger with a blood relation. That moment crystallized something for me, a realization that reconciliation was perhaps never an option. As if my presence was immaterial, the meeting ended, and life moved on. Thomas and Delilah married and began constructing their home. Thomas had landed a job at a prestigious company post-college, and was doing well financially. Delilah decided to become a stay-at-home wife and had already left her job. When their house was completed, they planned a housewarming party with a select guest list that included Delilah's relatives and my brother's superiors. My parents were flustered with excitement, pondering over the appropriate housewarming gift. My father suggested something simple since we were family, but when he glanced at the invitation, only his and my mother's names were listed. My mother, noticing the omission, queried, "Ava is coming too, right?" The question felt ironic, considering how they had previously presented me. Despite the dismissive attitude at the meeting, I initially declined the invitation, but my mother insisted, "No, you're coming. I'll make arrangements." Reluctantly, I agreed to go. On the day of the party, it started raining heavily. We took a taxi to my brother's new home. Due to the rain, my brother and Delilah didn't come out to greet us at the front yard, but waited at the entrance. As we arrived, my mother quickly told me, "You pay for the taxi," and then she and my father rushed under the limited shelter of the entrance without waiting for me. After paying, I hurried toward the house, soaked from the rain. At the entrance, Delilah greeted me. Her earlier warmth seemed tempered by the formalities of the event, and as I stepped into the warmth of their new home, I pondered the complexities of family dynamics and the distance that sometimes grows not just in miles, but in simple human connections. At the housewarming party, Delilah greeted me with a curious tilt of her head, seemingly unable to place me. "Who are you?" she asked. Despite having met her once before, it appeared she didn't remember me. I reintroduced myself as Ava, Thomas's sister, hoping to clarify any confusion. However, her response was chillingly dismissive, laced with a smile. "Ah, the high school dropout, right? Nate, we didn't invite the parasite living off her parents." Her words, though spoken casually, cut deep. Just then, my brother Thomas walked in, having overheard the exchange. His expression mirrored Delilah's disdain. "Huh, why are you here?" "Hey, I told you not to invite her." "Why is she here?" he questioned, his tone brimming with irritation. Caught off guard, I stammered, "Well, I don't know either." It was clear they hadn't intended for me to be part of this gathering. As the reality of their attitude sank in, Delilah's demeanor hardened further, surpassing even the coldness of my brother and parents. Thomas bluntly added, "Yeah, you're a stranger because of your low education. Actually, not finishing high school doesn't even count as an education, right? Could you please leave the property quickly?" Delilah nodded in agreement, her calm expression unchanging and somehow more intimidating. With no further words, I turned and left the party. Outside, the rain poured relentlessly. The taxi from earlier was long gone, and without an umbrella, I found myself walking along the drenched streets, struggling to find another cab. Behind me, I could faintly hear Delilah's laughter echoing, adding insult to injury. Eventually, I made my way home, soaked and disheartened. When my parents returned later, they seemed to have enjoyed themselves and were surprised to see me back so early. "Why did you leave suddenly? Couldn't even call a taxi for the way back, you're so useless," my mother scolded as if it were just another one of my failings. Attempting to avoid further conflict, I lied, "Sorry, I suddenly had a stomach ache." Their response was devoid of sympathy. "For such a reason, you left on your own. You're hopeless. Make sure to give the gift later, you're an adult," my father added dismissively. I had indeed prepared a gift for the party, but in the end, I brought it back home with me. I contemplated mailing it, but realized I didn't know their new address. The atmosphere was too strained to ask my parents, so I hesitantly reached out to my brother. "I want to send a gift. Can you tell me the address?" I texted. His reply was curt and cold, "I don't give my address to strangers." I sighed deeply, feeling a mix of amazement and sorrow at the extent of their exclusion. Was it genuinely enjoyable for them to assert their dominance over me, not just privately, but also in front of others? It seemed that the cruelty wasn't limited to Thomas. Perhaps Delilah was contributing to these harsh responses as well. Amidst the laughter and casual dismissal at the party, I realized that the disconnect between my family and myself was too vast to bridge. I decided not to send the congratulatory gift I had intended for my brother and his wife's housewarming. Instead, I made a more significant decision: to move out and live independently. Despite not having a full-time job, I had managed to save some money from various part-time jobs, which allowed me to rent a small room for myself. Living on a tight budget, I turned to video streaming, a hobby I enjoyed and understood well. I was already familiar with the dynamics of popular streams and knew how to garner views. Once I started my own streams, I began earning a decent income, enough to cover my daily expenses and then some. As my earnings increased, I started to invest my surplus funds. These investments paid off, enabling me to start a small business importing and selling goods. Life became busier, but it was a fulfilling kind of busy, without anyone to criticize how I spent my time. Several months into my new life, I received an unexpected call from my parents, who had not been in touch since I moved out. They asked for financial help for Thomas, which piqued my curiosity. What had happened to the brother, who had just built a luxurious new house? My parents explained that Thomas had been hosting frequent gatherings at his home, networking with bosses, executives, clients, and acquaintances of Delilah. During one of these parties, he was persuaded into a dubious investment that promised high returns in a short period. Unfortunately, the investment failed, and Thomas lost a substantial amount of money. I was astonished. Thomas had a stable job that should have been enough. I asked who had introduced him to the investment. "It's one of Delilah's acquaintances," they said, still seemingly trusting of Delilah. Curious, I asked how much they needed to bail him out. The amount they mentioned was staggering, far beyond what an average company employee could afford. Doubting the necessity, I probed if that was solely for my brother, and unsurprisingly, it turned out my parents were also caught in the same bad investment. I couldn't help but feel a mix of incredulity and frustration. They hadn't contacted me out of familial love, they only reached out for financial rescue. As they pressed on, claiming the bond of real family should compel me to help, I remembered all the times they had treated me as a stranger. "Sorry, but I'm busy, and I'm a stranger to you, right?" I responded, echoing their previous dismissals. With that, I ended the call. Somehow, my refusal did not deter them. Later, they found out where I lived, and to my dismay, my parents and Thomas's family showed up at my door. Their persistence was unexpected, but I was prepared to stand my ground, fortified by the independence and resilience I had cultivated in my new life. The encounter occurred at my small business office, where I was deep in a business meeting when my secretary quietly approached, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. "There are guests here for you, President." "I don't have any other appointments scheduled for you. Who could they be?" she inquired. Her next words sent a chill down my spine. "They claim to be your family." Apologizing to my business partner, I excused myself and made my way to the reception area. There, I was confronted with the unexpected sight of my pregnant sister-in-law Delilah, my brother, and my parents. My brother's first words dripped with condescension. "You're running a company, huh?" "Well, it's much smaller than where I work." He scanned the office disdainfully. Feigning ignorance, I asked, "Who are you?" which only ignited my brother's temper further. "What's with the attitude?" he shouted, frustration evident in his voice. My mother quickly interjected, laying bare their intentions without a hint of subtlety. "We talked about this before, but we need your support. You're running a company, so you can help us out, right?" The way she asked for money, as if entitled to my hard-earned success, was audacious. Delilah joined in, adding a layer of emotional manipulation. "Yeah, it's an important time for our family. Delilah is about to give birth, and the child's growth isn't good, so we need to see a good doctor. Please, Ava." My father and Delilah pressed on, their words suggesting it was my obligation to shoulder everyone's burdens. The awkwardness of the situation escalated as employees passed by the reception area, throwing concerned glances our way. Wishing to end this uncomfortable confrontation swiftly, I stated firmly, "Please leave. You're causing a disturbance." This statement threw my brother over the edge. "What? We are a disturbance? We came all the way here, and that's how you talk to your family," he yelled, his voice echoing through the office. The commotion halted nearby employees in their tracks. My brother, fueled by anger and desperation, attempted to shame me in front of my team. "Do you all know? This girl dropped out of middle school. She was a shut-in, no NEET." Yet, the response from my employees was not what he expected. They rallied to my defense, their voices firm and supportive. "We know, everyone knows the president's background." "Me too. The president hires many people from similar situations. Is there a problem?" My brother, usually mingling with the educated and affluent, was visibly taken aback, unable to formulate a coherent response. Meanwhile, my father scoffed, "What a pathetic company, just a gathering of needs." My brother echoed his disdain, "Exactly, companies that do business with." But their words faded into the background. Their attempt to demean me and my employees, people who had faced various challenges yet strived for better, only strengthened our resolve. In that moment, I realized that the values and resilience we shared as a team were far stronger than the shallow judgments passed by my estranged family. Their attempt to belittle us had failed, reinforcing my decision to maintain my distance and continue building a supportive and inclusive business environment. At that heated moment, the president of the company I had been meeting with, who had been waiting in the adjacent room, stepped into the reception area, drawn by the commotion. My brother Thomas, who had been loudly disparaging my company, turned pale upon seeing the president. His attempt to maintain some dignity failed as Delilah, unaware of who had joined us, inquired aloud, "What's wrong, Thomas?" "Idiot, don't say my name," my brother hissed at Delilah, but the damage was done. "Thomas? Oh, it's you," the president exclaimed, recognizing my brother. He approached Thomas confidently and addressed him, "You're the guy who handles Mr. Long's account, the facilities manager, right? We owe a lot to your company." It turned out that my brother's company was a client of the very person he had just insulted by association with me. Sweating profusely, my brother stumbled over his words, I guess I'm not memorable since we are not a decent company." His attempt at backpedaling only made his situation worse, and he was visibly shaken as the president threw his own derogatory words back at him. My parents and Delilah also recognized the gravity of the situation and fell silent, sensing the awkwardness escalating. I turned to the president and apologized again for the disruption. "I'm sorry for taking up your valuable time. I'll ask them to leave." But the president, perhaps sensing the tension and wanting to ensure things remained civil, offered, "Oh, are you sure? I have time today, so I don't mind waiting. You can prioritize talking with your family." Decisively, I responded, "No, they are not my family," casting a firm glance at my parents and brother's family. "They are complete strangers." Following this exchange, my family was escorted out of the company. The presence of the company president perhaps shocked them into silence, and they left without further incident. Curious about how my professional life came to light, I later discovered that Delilah was behind it. She had a well-informed friend who kept up with investment news. This friend had come across media coverage featuring a young woman in her 20s who was making waves as a skilled trader and business owner, me. Delilah was shocked to realize that this competent individual was the same person her husband had described as a middle school dropout and a shut-in. She shared this discovery with my brother and parents, prompting them to see me not as the family outcast, but as a potential financial resource. This revelation explained their sudden interest in my life, but by then, I had already established my boundaries and chosen to distance myself from their manipulative tactics. Since the day I declined to give my family financial assistance, they started reaching out more frequently. However, I was often busy and didn't respond to their calls, and after their direct request for money, I chose not to return their calls either. Unwilling to accept this, they took the drastic step of coming to my company. Having resolved to treat them like strangers, I maintained my distance, but curiosity about Delilah and her connections led me to delve a bit deeper. It turned out that Delilah's so-called friend, who was deeply involved in my family's financial misadventures, was actually her ex-boyfriend. More shockingly, I discovered that Delilah was still romantically involved with him, and that the child she was carrying was not my brother's, but her ex-boyfriend's, who was also an investor. Understandably, this revelation devastated my brother. The entire foundation of his relationship with Delilah was built on deception. It emerged that she, guided by her ex-boyfriend, had been siphoning money from multiple men. The situation escalated until Delilah and her ex-boyfriend were taken into police custody, though the money they had swindled was unlikely to be recovered soon. The fallout from these revelations rippled through my family. My brother's professional reputation suffered greatly after the incident at my company, leading to his relegation to a less influential position within his company, often derisively called a window-side department. Unable to cope with the mounting stress and humiliation, he eventually resigned. My father also faced severe repercussions. His unprofessional behavior at work came to light when he lost his temper with a subcontractor in the presence of his company's president. An investigation into his conduct revealed a pattern of derogatory remarks about the educational attainment of his colleagues, mirroring the disdain he had often shown towards me. This ultimately led to his dismissal. Despite both my brother and father losing their jobs, they, along with my mother, still attempted to contact me, proposing that we all live together. I had already taken measures to ensure they could not force their way into my building or disrupt my business again. Their latest entreaties often ended with, "We are still family, right?" But their previous actions had shown that their concept of family was conditional and self-serving. My response remained consistent and firm: "I don't know you. You're complete strangers to me." I have firmly decided that this will continue to be my stance in the future, preserving my peace and focusing on my own life and business without their disruptive influence.